among other things, will open doors, unlock the copy machine, catch the story. Oh, catch the story tonight. Well, then I guess strangers can't get in unless they cut your hand off and take it, and ding, ding. I mean, they're going to be losing lots of hands.
Right.
I know where you used to work. Just kidding. That was terrible.
Right. Well, we used to be part of Sun Microsystems. The founder for Sun Microsystems, Scott McNeely, and he'd say, "Oh yeah, privacy thing. So you chip your pets?" Everyone's like, "Yeah, chip your pets. Which you love more, your kids or your pets?" And everyone's like, "Oh, I don't want to chip my kids," but he's like,
I do.
I totally
chip
do
my
too.
kids.
Well, there you go.
Especially by girls.
But it raises
Little girls.
some privacy issues.
It does.
Once you're out of college,
but
take
I'm
the
not
chip
even
out.
trying to invade their privacy. I am simply trying to save their lives if they are abducted. That's my.
We should just sell chip necklaces.
That's
know,
why
but
their
if
cell
people-
phones have become kind of like that.
Something people don't know
disables
about.
his, Well, he does. He
So do
turns
I.
that off. It saves my battery. I'm like,
That's so funny.
it does because you have to leave. You have to have Wi-Fi on and you have to have the GPS on.
Oh,
It truly does. But because he lost his phone, I was like, well, let's just find your phone. I turned that off. Because I turned it off. In the background.
Is he have a girlfriend?
No.
What's he doing then? Where's he going with it? The sense of, are they searching for me? Not that, you know what I mean? And you're not
He's
even
really
that kind of
He's
parent.
really not. I know. We're really not. And he really is like, man, I don't need it. It's just who he is.
Hello.
Hello. Good morning. How are you?
Hi. How you doing, Dan?
Doing well so far. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Not too bad.
So, Peter, we're just waiting for other folks to join in here. So,
Okay.
Did the email come across or the invite show up in some fashion that you went, oh, hey, there's the Hangout, I'm in?
Yeah. I'm not as proficient with the Hangouts as I probably would like to be. So but what I got was the ringtone.
Oh.
There was some ringtone, so I followed the ringtone.
Okay, cool. Tell you what, let me drop a note to Mark and Rich and make sure that they were on, and they're probably listening for some funky ringtone thing. So
Okay.
hang on just a minute here. Let's see, and invites are out. My phone number is 816-665-7. Almost 79. Come on. Okay, there's that.
I've seen myself in there twice.
Mark issues.
I do love waking up at 3 in the morning and hoping it's
Okay, so what we usually do is hey, I've got the Hangout. I can't see it. Quick, invite me to another one. So for some reason, we always end up doing a second one that everyone.
Okay.
No idea about that. If you don't, do you want to wait for Mark for introductions, or how do you want to run things?
Yeah, I'm just looking for. He says all he gets is green. What does that mean?
Coffee?
Me too.
Green tea, maybe tea.
Green tea?
Maybe he's waiting for tea.
Well, would it help if I did an invite to him? So I'm gonna. Let's see.
Maybe I can.
Go ahead.
Him. Daniel.
We do this every first Friday when we have our
Whoops.
call.
Oh, yeah?
And the Google Hangouts every time.
Huh.
Because we're adding people
Right.
and new people that haven't been in there before.
So what's the trick? What finally gets it?
I don't
That's
never the one driving it. It's always
Right.
Jeff.
Can I just copy the URL and can you
Yes.
just access it? There we go.
Yes. It's a public. Yeah. Just. I did the public thing just so that it wasn't a problem for people to get to it.
Right. So that should work then.
If we get stalkers or something, we'll have to boot them.
Yeah. Well.
Hey, you're not an educator. Get out of here, or something like that. So we want to wait for Mark for introductions, or how do you want to proceed?
So, well, we might as well get started. He should be in. I sent him the link, so he should be in any second now.
Cool. So is it okay to turn the camera your direction so you can say hi and stuff? Okay. So you know me. My name's Daniel. I'm with Immersive Education Group, and I'm going to turn the camera around and let everybody else introduce themselves, and you can do the same. Does that work?
Sure. Yeah, that's great.
So hi, I'm Shannon with Mozilla. Oh.
Hi, Shannon. I wear a toque, so it's winter here, so I've got my hair everywhere. So.
Nice.
And your role with Mozilla is?
And I'm a project coordinator with Mozilla.
Okay.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
Hello, good morning. I'm Carrie. I'm also with Mozilla. And I run the local Gigabit Community Fund here, as well as Hive KC, which is a learning network of kind of a federation of youth-serving organizations that work to create more digital literacy and pathways for K through 12.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Very cool.
So with our Gigabit Fund project, which I think is some of the bridge that we worked with Dan on. We've been investing in educators, working with technologists on innovations and associated curricula in classrooms that leverage next generation technology like the gigabit infrastructure we have here in Kansas City. So we've really been looking at piloting projects and supporting them with funding and resources to really look at models that use the best opportunities for advancing ed tech in classrooms or informal spaces that we can spread and scale through our Hive learning communities with Mozilla and kind of spread those great programs out.
So pushing the envelope, really.
We are pushing the envelope. It's been really interesting to get educators to work with developers in meaningful ways and start to imbibe that entrepreneurial kind of teacher-led inspiration and innovation in the classroom and get them thinking like the entrepreneurs about things that they can change and things that they can do in their classroom.
Very cool. Well, I mean, this is right up our alley. We're a startup. And so for us, I guess our user base is almost entirely built on early adopters. So these teachers who kind of are trying their hand at this entrepreneurship in a sense, really, where they're trying to push the envelope in their classroom or kind of champion an idea or a technology through to their to whatever it is they envision as good teaching in the 21st century. And so we have a lot of that as our user base, our initial user base. So it kind of speaks exactly to what you were talking about. Oh, I think we've frozen here.
Yeah, there you go. You're unfrozen.
Oh, okay. I thought you were taking a big sip of your coffee, but no.
Well, I was. I can't actually say that I was not doing that.
So Mark is still having issues.
Let's see. I could commandeer the thing and send the URL public to the group. Would that work?
Maybe.
Okay.
Let me just make sure that he's on the right page.
So I've got the little chat thing up too, and all it says is Peter joined the group, and that's all I've got.
Okay, so I'm just trying to see where he is in cyberspace.
Okay. And if it's easier to do the screen share thing, we could do Skype, or whatever you guys want. It's all good. I just was hoping this would be the lowest impact. But based on your experience, maybe not.
We've used this before. It's not our primary device, but he should still be able to work his way through.
Got it.
So, well, we might as well, I guess, keep going. We'll see if he can find his way.
Let me let me make sure everybody's got the URL. So sorry for further delays here, but let's see. Okay. All right, and oh, come on.
Okay.
Oh, I hear Mark.
Woo!
Sorry,
There he
guys.
is.
It's because I wasn't on. For some reason, it doesn't like Safari.
Oh, yeah, it's Google Hangout is very much a we like Chrome kind of thing. So
Right. Sorry, guys.
I probably should tell Rich that as well, because it doesn't say warning, you're on Safari, don't do it or something.
Yeah,
Right.
So Mark, you want to introduce yourself, and Peter too, well, since we're all four in the room?
Yeah.
Sure. So go ahead, Peter. I'm just plugging in my headphones.
Okay, so just briefly, I'm Peter, and now we've got Mark, and so Mark and I are two teachers who had an opportunity to kind of build out a vision that we had in terms of being able to, as we were speaking to a moment ago, about kind of pushing the envelope, trying to use the technology that's available to us in meaningful ways, and kind of trying to surpass this old these shackles that seem to kind of follow us in the education space about, classrooms being the same as they were 100 years ago, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to break through that almost that brand of education and trying to push the envelope. So as I said, we were given this opportunity a few years ago to start doing just that. So Mark, do you want to add?
Yeah, no. So I mean, Peter and I come from sort of two different areas in education. Peter is, strictly, he was doing IT, and I was doing special ed and admin. And so I guess, like Peter said, a couple of years ago when we got this opportunity, we sort of combined the best of both worlds. So Peter's way more the technical one, and more of the builder, and I come from, really more of an educational, and special ed background. But like Peter said, we're the vision that we have is sort of together in that we're trying to change the way we're thinking about a classroom. And I guess a lot of people are trying to do that, but it seems especially in the elementary, K to 8 area, which is where Peter and I sort of came from, there's not a lot of necessarily innovation down there. So when we thought about how we would do it, it all became how we would use a virtual world to do this. And so that's what Answerables is all about.
And from our perspective, I'm hoping Rich pops on as well, the Immersive Education Group has been trying to leverage what's going on in virtual worlds for some time so that we bring that into the classroom. It doesn't have to be a research project in graduate school if you get really lucky to be able to use that, especially if you've got gigabit connectivity, and these things are, 1,000 to 10,000 times what they used to be 5 years ago. We're trying to use that as a tool for education, as opposed to, if you get really lucky, you might be a virtual reality person too. Let's use the tool to do normal education stuff, especially that they're already doing that. They're already going and shooting each other at night. They're already playing Minecraft. They're doing all this stuff. They're used to this environment already. So I'm hoping Rich joins, but is it possible just to pop in and demo Answerables and the kind of things you can do with it?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let me just share my screen here. And I want screen 2.
So actually, sorry guys, I wasn't in at the very beginning of the call. I don't know anyone else's names. I know Dan. Who else were we talking with?
Hi,
Sorry,
I'm
Mike.
Carrie with Mozilla, and this is Shannon with Mozilla as well.
Okay.
Here in Kansas City, we lead the local Gigabit Community Fund, where we're investing and supporting local innovation in classrooms, both formal and informal. Teachers and technologists who are working together to do interesting things that leverage gigabit technology in their classrooms. So we invested in 9 projects over the course of the last year that took place in 24 different educational spaces. And then from Mozilla's angle, this was a grant that we got from the National Science Foundation. We're looking to renew that grant for another 3 years and expand this level of programming, very intentional innovation-based programming that leverages gigabit infrastructure, into 3 additional cities. So right now we launched in Kansas City and Chattanooga, Tennessee,
Right.
and have had great success in virtual programming, telepresence, immersive styles of education, also just platforms and new innovation in professional development and actual teaching methodologies, as well as curricular-based programs. So we're looking to replicate that kind of innovation and experimentation in other communities. So programs and products like what you guys have are of great interest to us, as well as what Dan does on the immersive education side. So we really like to look at as many pathways as we can to help foster and support that kind of innovation.
And so it ends up, as kind of like a pilot in a school. Is that where these projects generally end up?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you said it's Kansas City, Chattanooga, and then there's a third city?
We're actually trying to launch in 3 additional cities over the course of the next 3 years, but we're waiting to hear back from the National Science Foundation if we got those the award funding.
Okay, awesome.
So that's
all right. Okay, I think Peter's all ready. I can see a screen down there.
Yep. Is everyone can see this big purple-pink screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I thought today, Dan, Carrie and Shannon, I took Dan through this demo a few weeks ago, and it was exceptionally lengthy, and there were a lot of very kind of deep questions, which was great because obviously Dan and I have some kind of deeper understanding of all these sorts of the way things work and all of that, and so it led to some amazing conversations. But I think what I'd like to do today is kind of make it a little bit different. So I'm going to do a bit of role playing, if that's okay. So I'd like to take you through kind of a day in the life of a teacher using a space like Answerables for particularly for lesson planning. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Yep. Go for it.
So instead of getting kind of sidetracked with all the features and that sort of thing, we just kind of, what would the experience what might it look like for a teacher using the space? So the first thing you need to know is that we've got we call it a dashboard. It's a web application. It lives on the web. There are 2 versions of it, one that we use kind of in the game and one that we use outside the game. And so what you're looking at here is one version. This is the dashboard. This is typically what a teacher uses in terms of lesson planning on something like this. Is they use features that are inherent in, say, a learning management system. So one of the first things that we try to introduce to teachers is this idea of this learning management system. But as Mark was mentioning, this isn't something that we're trying to work into a graduate program where it can be very kind of abstract and complex with many, many different feature sets. We're looking at this as a teacher in a K-8 or a K-12 environment who doesn't necessarily have a lot of the technical skills or the experience that's necessary for some of those. So we built out this kind of this very we call it a light LMS. And essentially what we've got is a bunch of options. So in this situation, I am a teacher. I have created a pod. Now, a pod is like a virtual classroom. So if I go to my pods, for example, I've created a classroom called Mr. C's Science Wonderland. And this is where I kind of administer it. So if I go to that and just go to my pods here for a second. One thing while I was setting this up, I realized I didn't really like the Wonderland part, so I was going to call it, say, Adventure. So I'm just editing this classroom environment. So maybe that, Mr. C's Science Adventure. Adventures in Science. And I can look at things like my upcoming events that I've created. So we've got kind of a brainstorming session happening next week. Maybe we had a guest speaker coming in, so I could say, speaker in cell biology. So we're doing a unit in cell biology, for example, maybe grade 6, and we're going to have a speaker come in maybe next Thursday at 10 a.m. So you get the idea. It's very, oops. Oh, I didn't add my invite people. That's good. Okay, it should be okay now. Enter date and time. Oh, 10 a.m. Perfect. Okay, so we've got upcoming events. I can write an assignment. So again, this is very traditional learning management system type stuff. I created an assignment. I called it organelles. It gives the students some kind of outline as to what is expected of them and what they need to do to complete the assignment. And so that's kind of, I mean, there are other options. I won't take you through them, but this is, you know, your kind of like your traditional learning management system, but simplified. What that has done here is, I'm going to zoom us out for a second. So what that has done is that has changed or altered what the experience is like in this 3D environment that you're now looking at. So now as a teacher, I'm this avatar, this 3D avatar. I can move around the space. In this case, I'm going to walk up to my classroom list, my pod list. I'm going to go to Mr. C's Science Adventure, and now I'm headed off to this virtual classroom environment. Well, the first thing to note about this is that this is a multiplayer environment, and membership to this particular space is limited to those who are enrolled in my class. I didn't get into that whole part of the learning management system, but it's enrollment based, so I can add my students to whichever classes I'd like. So it's very kind of secure and again, learning management type functionality like that. The difference, of course, is that the classroom looks nothing like a learning management system. It's not like a Moodle or any of these Blackboard or Desire to Learn type environments. It's very immersive. And so some of the things that it allows me to do is it allows me to start playing with the content in different ways that I want my students to have access to. First thing that we have that we talk about is this collaborative web browsing idea. So we've been able to embed a web browsing system into our environment. And so we've used that so that we give the teacher tools to leverage content in their classroom. So as a teacher, and I worked in a computer lab most often when I was teaching. And for me, resource management was a huge time waster. Getting students onto the page I want them to get onto, trying to share the resources that I need to share with them, homework, that sort of thing was pretty labor intensive. So we've kind of tried to make that a lot simpler. So we've got a system in here. It's a collaborative web browsing system that actually, Mark, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I'm just trying to log in.
Yeah, I'm. For you guys, you know what? I'm gonna log out for a second. Something's I don't see. Not in the right space for some reason. I might have been in too long. I think I had this up overnight. So let me just quickly quit and start that again.
Okay. And this is probably a good time to suggest what you're seeing. That's actually the individual students running something on a Mac or a PC. So there's a client. And then there's a back-end server system that is the LMS, and that is the thing they're all connecting to, much like a Minecraft world, or if you were in Second Life, that sort of thing. And Rich, looks like you joined, which is great. Thanks for joining. If it's possible for you to unmute, and if you want to overview, kind of you found this down at the Education Tech Conference, and maybe a couple of things of why this looks like something the Immersive Ed Group wants to look into.
Yeah, I've seen it at FETC in Florida, and I really liked it because of several of the things Peter had mentioned. The ability to really direct kids in the environment. Most of the 3D environments we were in were more of these kind of really open spaces, kind of a sandbox, more or less, space. And this reminded me of the game environment with a directed learning activity. So it was really easy to kind of direct the students to the places that you wanted them to be while still giving them that feeling that they were in this game.
Cool.
Yeah, a big part of it, sorry, Rich, was that as teachers, we really wanted that classroom, you can't take the educator out of the equation when you're talking about all this, right? You still want a lot of guidance, you still want a lot of direction, just like you're saying. And just because we're moving into like a virtual world space doesn't mean that the teacher needs to be any less involved in the whole thing. It's just involved in a very different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a good point, Mark. And so one of the one of our, I guess we'll call it a hurdle at this point, or obstacles, is the challenge lies really in how motivated a teacher is to learn something new. Because what we're starting to describe to you is a very different way of lesson planning. Essentially, I mean, lesson planning is kind of the same. I've got to find some resources and I've got to break it out into kind of segments or modules, and lesson 1, lesson 2. I've got to find some way to assess students' progress and that sort of thing, and then an evaluation period at the end. So that doesn't change, but how we do that tends to change. And one of the things that we find, one of the kind of the pain points for a teacher is there is this sea of resources, of tools, of applications, of ways that I can kind of deliver my content, and it's really kind of scattered across the internet universe. And one of the cool things about building this immersive 3D space is it provides context, and it provides kind of location for fitting all of these pieces that are scattered across the universe. Kind of, you can fit them in here. And what I mean by that is one of the first things we like to do is we like to talk about building your resources, your learning resources as a teacher. So it's really as simple as I go onto the internet and I go to my favorite place. So if I like to start at Google, then I can start at Google, and then I start looking for my resources. If I use a tool such as, let's say, is Guru there? It's not there. If I like to use something more education-based in terms of search engines, then I can, use something like Guru. There we go. Or possibly I use Edmodo, or the list goes on, so on and so forth. If it's web-based, we can access it in the game. And so the first step for a teacher is in creating their resources. Now, we are trying to facilitate that a little more to make it easier. A lot of teachers don't have time to go in and kind of add all of their hundreds and hundreds of resources into this space. So we're trying to also facilitate ways for them to just come in, grab a module that fits their needs, and then they can just kind of use it, and away they go.
So we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. Well, for example, we've got this, let's see, cells, ed apps. Let's say ed apps. So what do we got here? Blend Space, Desmos Graphing, Glogster, Storyboard, that. So maybe this would be a good starting point for me as a teacher. Maybe I use some of those apps. So I'm just going to grab that, add it to my inventory, and then I can start playing with these things. The next step to this is, that's great. I've got my resources. I've added my collections. I've kind of built my library of stuff I want to share, and then I share it. So Mark's in a space here, and let's say he's my student, and he's come up to my message board, and it says, I added the project outline to the dispenser. Please ask if you have any questions. Reminder that the animal cells assignment is due by Friday. So here we are, real live kind of context. I'm using the space as a teacher to deliver the learning content to the students. Mark now can access this from home. He can access this from school, in groups, by himself, what have you. It's here. It's waiting for him whenever he needs it. I can also do things like this. So this was a kind of a silly little cell song video, but I can add anything to them. So maybe I wanted to show Mark or the classroom something on atoms. So I drop this resource. It's just a website onto my web browser, and now it becomes available for both of us or anyone else who's in this space. So really, this is where I can start adding the content in very specific ways that I need my students to gain access. We have lots of different ways to do that, and we've got teachers coming up with even more creative ways of delivering the resources to their students that we hadn't even thought of. But we're trying to make this kind of as linear as possible so that a teacher can quickly start understanding how I can get started, doing this sort of thing. So up to this point, it was create my pod, create my learning resources, or find them or add them somehow, and then share them with the students. So I guess something else as we're here, something else about this space is we've got voice and video chat. So if I turned on my
sorry,
my
Peter,
display.
just to technical question. Do I have to turn off my Hangouts camera before I turn on my game camera?
Yeah, you can't because
so
it
I'm just
would
gonna- I'm
expect
just
you
gonna
to
turn
have
off
two
my-
different cameras.
Yeah, I'm just turning it off for a second.
It's actually causing a bit of issue for me as well. But you can see me on the wall there, or on this board. And one of the cool features about this is now we can turn this into a social network. Teachers use this. Of course, the students can find many different ways to use this, but the teachers use this in particular for things like live events. And this is where we're speaking to the, I guess, the kind of the gigabit and broadband type scenarios where it is a heavy bandwidth hog when we start adding. The more players we add, the more co-location we add, the more bandwidth is required. You start adding video streaming to each of these users, and it kind of compounds. And so really what we often find is we've got different teachers using this in different ways, and oftentimes we find that they're kind of limited by their bandwidth in some regards. So for this for example, if we were to have a live speaker, a guest speaker come into the space, we talk to teachers about just being careful how many video streams you have working. Often it's best to just have the one stream for the guest speaker, and then all of the students kind of turning off their video, because again, we're trying to conserve the bandwidth. But having more bandwidth, of course, would kind of make that a non-issue.
And that's part and parcel of some of the stuff that Rich and myself and others in immersive education summits inevitably will, hey, it works. Wow, we can see 2 videos of each other. Yay, let's go ahead and turn on a classroom of 20. Whoops.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So and now some of these other issues we have are of course with not so much bandwidth, but with the hardware itself. So the graphics cards, we're working with a community center up here in Oakville, and Mark was literally over at the community center yesterday, just reinstalling new video cards to see if we can kind of upgrade their systems for them, so so they could run this a bit smoother. Now they have the similar issues with they've got Minecraft running on their machines, and it's all kind of part and parcel to the immersive 3D environment that does require a little bit more hardware, a little hardware heavy, but I guess that's kind of part of the challenge for us.
Yeah, when we're always encountering it, what kind of equipment are we dealing with in different kinds of schools? I don't know how things are in Kansas City, but up and around Toronto area, it really can range from a school that has some awesome new equipment to schools that are still using XP, a lab full of computers on XP.
Yep.
So there's a huge range, and every single time we get a school sign up or an organization sign up like that community center, we have to really go in and say, okay, well, before we even start talking, what do you guys have? Because there's certain minimum requirements for something like this.
Yeah, we have that issue as well.
Yeah. Let me see what we've got here. Yeah. So I'm not sure if you remember, but let me go back for a second just to kind of bring the context back. So if, as a teacher, oftentimes teachers are much more comfortable in this 2D space, which is fine. They can access this from the web without ever even having to log into the game. So I added this assignment, which is available to the students. And so if Mark or any student comes up to this assignments area, they will now have this assignment available to them. And it's kind of interesting what we're able to do here. Oh, we've got a little bit of funkiness. What we can do is we can start integrating the game type mechanics with the web-based stuff. So here what I'm actually expecting of the students is for them to take a Google document that they've been working on and actually drag and drop it into here where they can now submit it. Whoops. There we go. Where they can now submit it to the teacher. Teacher gets notified in the game or on their dashboard that there has been a submission. And then they can provide some feedback, and away we go. So it's just kind of another way we're trying to provide the teachers with the tools that they need, the real life, I guess, tools that they need to work this space as an extension to their classroom. Because it's one thing to have a nice, cool looking environment and kids can run around and co-location and what have you, but if they can't use it in a real way, for in this case lesson planning and delivering content, it kind of loses its value. Last thing I want to show you, and then I think I'm done. I mean, there's tons of stuff we can show you, but this is where we extend this kind of we blur the lines between this 3D immersive environment and the learning even more. What we can start to do
do we have the organelle, the actual thing you go into, and is that possible to check that out just briefly?
Yes, yeah, for sure. So here, I'll just load that up. So what we've got here is, and this is currently what we're building. Our development team, it's a very small development team. We're as of today, as of this last few weeks, we've started building out our own library of immersive content. So, for example, the simplest example we always use is, we all know about those worksheets that all of the kids, and they have for the last 30, 40, 50 years, have brought home. Is when we're talking about, okay, let's name the parts of whatever it is, right? So if it's a microscope, or if it's a cell, or if it's a timeline, a historical timeline, right? It's kind of this very 2D, here's some labels and they're blank, and you just have to fill in the blanks, and you now know all of the parts of that thing. We're trying to extend that and make that a little bit more. Through immersion, we can increase the engagement and the experience tenfold, and so that's kind of what we're doing right now, is we're building out our library of interactive and immersive content, so that a teacher can, when they're building their lessons, so I've got the websites I need them to get, I have the assignments I've created, I have the Google Docs that I need them to work through. I also want this immersive bit. I want them to, in this case, I'll show you. We're dealing with cells, so I'm going to go in, and I guess we can imagine this now as from the student's perspective. So I'm in this little, we call it a holodeck, but it's like a learning module, and it's really focused on this idea of animal cells in particular. So I walk up to our kind of computer here, and this one in particular I think is the one you were speaking to. So we'll talk about the animal cells. So I'm going to load up this animal cell. It's an immersive adventure. I think I heard Mark. Are you in here as well?
Yep, I'm in there. I'm right behind you.
So Mark will also get the opportunity to join the same space that I'm in. I could also do this solo. I load this up, and oh yeah, there you are. And away we go. Welcome back. This is your animal cell quest discovery. It is nothing more than a worksheet. It's much more interactive. So here I have an animal cell. It's a 3D model, and it's broken up into its organelles. And my only task here is to explore them. So I will come up here, I'll say rough endoplasmic reticulum, I click on it, gives me a bit of information about it. Now in this case I think I've mostly completed the quest, so there's probably, here let me just check my quest log here. So it's not telling me, but it would be telling me, oh, you've completed this part of the quest, that sort of thing. So Mark right now is probably going through and completing the objectives to his quest. But for me, I'm just exploring this immersive worksheet is what we call this. There's some of the organelles have some extra, some web-based information. If I'm a teacher, I could add extra content if I wanted to dive a bit deeper into each of them. But this is essentially that worksheet in a 3D space, and we can do this with literally anything. So this is currently what we're doing is we're building our library of these immersive worksheets. We're building some tools, like we're building for example, a museum, which is a templatable 3D environment where it allows a teacher to concentrate a set of web-based documents in a specific kind of a themed module. We're also building a timeline, templatable timeline, so that teachers can add, historical data on a 3D kind of a timeline, and so on and so forth. We've got lots of things that we're focusing on in terms of giving teacher that added immersive content to add to their lesson planning, on top of the pod, kind of the classroom environment itself.
And we're really trying hard to listen to the teachers too, because when we were at FETC, where we met Rich, we as we were doing these demos, and they got to the cell part of it, what you're seeing now, they were like, "Oh, could you make a DNA strand? Could you make a interior of a computer motherboard?" And same experience. The student is able to actually immerse themselves in the thing, literally walk around everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we came back with lists of just these wish lists from different teachers, all of it coming from their own subject-specific areas. I want the interior of a pyramid, or how about an art gallery, or how about any number of things. So
one of the things I like about this arrangement is the extensibility. So Rich, for instance, you've got the young man over in Leavenworth that did the Scratch 2D game with the organelles, right? The cell game.
Yeah.
So one of the things I like is if the teacher, short of like, oh, somebody must now build me a 3D model to do blah, you could just include in that the student that did your the organelle cell game as part of the module. So I love that extensibility part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So let me just show you. So if I go here, I do have a token, but here it is. Right, so if I was in my Scratch program and
I don't know if you guys are dealing with Coder Dojo KC when we do that, the Fiberspace.
Mm-hmm.
Out of like 80 students that show up, about 60 of them end up showing a Scratch project. So this is almost like a lingua franca of little kids, what they build.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to incorporate this just like directly into the modules is like, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess this is something that we don't, maybe we don't speak enough to, Mark, but what we have here is, I guess another level to this is when I'm logged in as a student, I have my own workspace. It looks a lot like this, only it's a lot smaller, and this is where I can start sharing my content with the world. I mean, you can do it here. As a teacher, I can, for example, set the permissions on this terminal here that allow my students to present stuff. So looks like everything's on. So I could give my student the ability to present on here. And so if it was just a matter of taking my Scratch, maybe this is my Scratch project that I've been working hard on, and then I add it to my resources here, and then I could share it and present it to my classroom, just like that. I just drop it on here, and now everybody gets to see my Scratch. Or, as I was showing you earlier, this would be also a good opportunity. Okay, the teacher has created an assignment, and you were supposed to build a 2D organelle in Scratch. Perfect. Here it is. I'll drop it into here, and away I go.
Cool, thank you. That's exactly what I was getting at. So, absolutely.
And for the students, it's amazing because they get to see their work in a sense, displayed inside this game, and that a lot of them have never had an experience like that at all.
Right.
So really, for them, it's really blows them away when they get to see that.
Yep.
So what's the reach look like? I mean, how many schools are using your program, and how do you support the professional development for teachers? Because I think that's where we tend to find the most challenge in spreading and scaling good programs is in really distilling the methodology to other teachers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And this is kind of on a parallel path what we're going through currently. So we have got well, I'll just say we've got tons of interest. We've got schools signing up every day. But what we're noticing is there is a huge drop-off between that initial excitement and actually using the space. And what we have discovered is that it's exactly what you were speaking to. It's onboarding, it's training, it's best practices for something like this. It's very new, it's very novel, very unique, and so it's taking some time in order to get those a nice workflow, for example, for lesson planning. And so on and so forth.
Yeah, right now, it's a combination of us trying to train the teachers as much as we can with modules inside the game, which we're developing and building out. And the other part of it is actually meeting with people and having phone conversations and having live demos like we're doing now and all that sort of thing. So, but it's a lot of time needs to be taken up. I mean, yesterday, for example, I was at that community center for most of the day, working with the leader at the over there. So it does take a lot of time.
And I think some of this is definitely it is our responsibility to make sure that there is a proper kind of onboarding process, and we have recently brought on board an expert in this matter. I'm not sure, guys. You may have heard of John Lester, Pathfinder. That might be a name you're familiar with, but he's he's deep into the immersive learning world, and so he is kind of coming on board to help us with a portion of this. But there's this other portion where it's inevitable that this is going to take some time because of what we're proposing here is quite new. And so there's a bit of a learning curve for all of us, I think. For example, the topic that comes up with teachers when we discuss this with them a lot is classroom management. Virtual classroom management is all of a sudden, a real thing, and it's very different from face-to-face classroom management. And so what does that look like? What are the best practices for that? How can we, onboard a teacher quickly in understanding, this and that, and so supporting a community, that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So if so let's say that there was a pilot in Kansas City, or say between two schools, in terms of professional development and so forth. How would one sort of chart that out as something over the next 9 months to set up a pilot? In terms of professional development, how would one approach that?
Yeah, so I think part of it is working with us directly. I think it's invaluable, certainly at this point, and not just for us in getting our workflow better, but for the teacher and starting to understand how this can be, the potentials of how this can be used, is really just a, once a week, sitting with us, we kind of like virtual office hours or whatnot, where we can go through a specific topic, a specific professional development type topic, and kind of hash through it. The other part of it is, and this is on our part, and I'll just kind of quickly show you what we're started to work on, is just integrating the game mechanics into this. So for example, our training, we've got lots of features, we've got things that you can do, and we've just started to break them down into little learning modules for the teachers. But this is just kind of part of it. This really is a work in progress at this point. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting for me right now is we're looking sort of down the runway of the next 3 years, and really trying to land on some programs that can evolve in sophistication, both from hardware infrastructure, but also the curriculum and sort of the classroom delivery mechanics. There's some opportunity for Mozilla with the Gigabit Fund to invest in projects like this that could take advantage of the software-defined networking, the kind of next generation, the Internet 2 sort of side of networking infrastructure. So it could be an exemplar way to spotlight some of the hardware challenges you had, to show the best possible design of education delivery with in a virtual environment, and then having the gigabit infrastructure laid on top of that for actual fiber delivery for the streaming components. But we're kind of taking this as a whole ecosystem and looking at the infrastructure that really needs to be there for it to be the most rich and optimized. Now, we're not taking into consideration the soft edges of all of the professional development, but we do that more on the front end with what Shannon and I do in these environments. But that's the kind of projects and programs that Mozilla is interested in finding, sourcing, and scaling. So there could be a way for us to come up with a really great project that would help you sort of define to the hardware and bandwidth and low latency components that you want to have, derivative in the delivery of these programs, to help offset some of that cost and just the sort of model of it.
And let me try and connect this really quickly. One of the projects that we're doing with Kansas City Public Library is using Minecraft for EDU, and we've got the virtual reality goggles so that the kids can do the 3D modeling and put worlds together and all that stuff. Where the students are asking to go is, hey, I'd like to make a game in Unity. And we don't really have a good path to say, oh, yes, here's how you build your own model and kick it in there. So there's an extensibility element about what you're saying for the next 3 years. The project that we got through the grant is wanting to go in a direction where they're using resources and tools like this in an extensible way so that they can learn to create the assets themselves and incorporate that. So with that, we've talked about that a little bit. You guys want to talk to that for a minute?
Sure, yeah. And this is, again, we're speaking of parallel paths. So we did a little bit of, actually, after our conversation a few weeks ago, we kind of did a little bit of research and digging just to make sure that we were on track with what we were speaking to in terms of scaling this out, making this a true kind of ecosystem, and where students themselves can build this stuff out. And the asset bundles using our gaming engine it really does fit really well with what we're doing. So what we've done is we've started to, and as we build out our library, we're starting to, each of our kind of templates that I was speaking to before is now going to be developed in light of our API. So what is, for us, our questions are, what do we need to make sure we have available so that when someone is developing something from outside, they need this, this, and this, but for them it's just a matter of building it out, sending it, and away we go. So it was really kind of good news for us in terms of our roadmap to making sure that this thing is scalable as we had imagined, and it certainly is. So so that's good news.
Yeah, and I think it's just it takes that whole student being able to share stuff to a whole other level. Because one thing, they can pull up something there's web-based, but if they were able to build something in Unity and then somehow put it into a gallery or however we ended up being inside answerables, I mean, I think that would be really big for them. And then again, to be able to share that with them, to be able to share that then with other students or their teacher, or even to be able to create something as an assignment, and this is part of their course, a mark for their courses. They're building this 3D module and demonstrating knowledge through that. I think that would be great.
And just to extend that, we had worked with a group of students, college students up here, and it was an 8-month program that we kind of had 8 of them, and their kind of their touchstone project, as they called it, their kind of end of course project was to work with us building what exactly I think what we're talking about is, we called them mini games at the time. And so each of them had, they proposed a game that was math based between grades 5 and 10, and they kind of built out a proof of concept of these mini games. And so to extend this, not only will we be able to have these students create those, exactly that, those mini games, those things where they've kind of really thought about the start, middle, and end, and all of the kind of in-betweens with the game mechanics, they can now share that with the world, right? And so all of a sudden I go into my space, I go to the marketplace, here's a list of all of the available mini games that have been created by students. I can load one up and it works for me, and you can probably give feedback, you know, so on and so forth. So I mean, it just, sky's the limit in terms of what we can do with that.
So there's an open kind of community marketplace for things that are built and designed in the environment that can be shared across schools, teachers, resources.
Well, and this is our part of our roadmap. So everything we've built is with that in mind. So I guess we didn't really get too much into this, but it's, so everything kind of, when I sign up as register as an organization in Answerables, I kind of get siloed. So for example, if I go to the next lobby, any teachers or any members of my organization all have access to a space that looks like this. From here, so like I said, each kind of organization is siloed, but from here we are expecting to kind of network different organizations. So one of the simplest examples is 2 schools, they want to collaborate on a project together, then they should be able to go somewhere else that is a shared space that that they can go to, whether it's a coliseum for kind of a competition type thing, or if it's like a collaborative event, a live event, or whatnot. And so one of the elements that we're on a roadmap that we're building toward is this marketplace idea, where there's this kind of overworld that any organization can go to. It's a public domain where we've got various kind of educational outreach organizations who have kind of a virtual location in there where students can share, like I said, can share their work, where you can go and browse through content and so on and so forth.
So is the idea, as Thingiverse is to Tinkercad, so too would be the open marketplace for items that would be consumable inside Answerables?
Correct.
Oh, okay. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I mean that just expands the value exponentially over time as those things really aggregate.
We hesitate to say the 3D web because there's a lot of connotation with that, but really,
you can say that to Mozilla.
Right.
Yeah.
We're down.
Yeah, that's cool.
This is really, really exciting. Shannon and I were at a school yesterday. It's a brand new elementary school, K through 5, in a suburban area of Kansas City, and it's all project-based learning. And so this is their first year, and so everything has been new and novel, from the teacher induction and onboarding to the way that they're teaching, and semester over semester results anecdotally and even quantifiably with their testing has been extremely positive. But this fits really well with how they teach. It would be a great fit for them because their teachers are already sort of playing and navigating along the lines of this kind of methodology. Does this work? You talked about like the device and the way that the kids use this tool. Does it work on an iPad, or does it have to be a computer?
Well, we are in like a beta version of our iPad, of it becoming an iPad. When we got to FETC, one of our things we wanted to make sure we had down there was at least a working version on an iPad.
Okay.
It is not. It's certainly not a full-on working version. It's still beta. So, I mean, to answer your question today, it would be we're not on iPads yet. But that being said, depending on what we needed to do, if we needed to put more development time towards the iPad app, then it certainly could be done, because it does exist on an iPad. There's just other things that need to be built out into it.
Gotcha.
So for those environments like Epic, is that what they have?
Well, they've got a combination, right? They do have a lot of laptops, but they have one-to-one with iPads.
Oh,
And
I
so
see.
a lot of the day-to-day active, lesson planning and stuff centers around the iPads. But there
Got
are laptops and other computers across the facility.
Okay. Makes
So
sense.
it would certainly, you would want it to have some baseline level functionality on an iPad, even if there is more full-blown, access through a
Right.
more traditional device. But
Got it.
anyway, I was just curious.
All right. I've got to disconnect at 10:15, unfortunately, so sorry to limit things. Any questions and answers from either side that
I think just for some next steps for us to kind of traverse, some sort of exploration beyond this initial demo. We are in the process of going through the grant renewal, so we'll know the end of March what the next 3 years looks like. I would love to re-engage with you guys at that point, because I think we'll have a pretty good lead on the types of projects, the timing of those projects, and when that innovation funding would be available. And we could talk more logistically about potential pilot scenario and things like that. So in the meantime, I would love to just trade contact information and keep in touch as things present themselves. But definitely reconnect in late March to have a follow-on discussion.
Sure. Well, if you want to send either of us over your contact stuff, so we make sure we have we keep in touch, and then whenever you guys are ready to talk about other things, and we're here. We're just going to keep working with the schools that we have and developing as much as we can.
Very exciting stuff. Really appreciate it.
Oh, well, thank you guys very much for the opportunity.
And for organizing it and putting it.
No worries. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Peter.
Thanks.
Rich and William, you guys are on. Any questions or comments?
No, it's definitely a good concept. I kind of feel bad. I've been sending you a text, and I sent Shannon a text saying, man, I think I need to jump off of this call, because they're going in a direction that we kind of got our kids heading in. Pretty similar concept. I believe that once they have their stuff built out, it is something that we can put into one of the partition spaces that we have in our virtual engine that we're creating. But that has education as one of the components, but it also has entertainment and social networking involved as well. So you guys are thinking along the right lines for sure.
Cool.
Thanks.
Great.
Anything on Rich on your end?
No, I'm just glad to see everybody again this morning, and it was great to see you guys.
Yeah, well, thanks very much, Rich, because it's all started with our conversation down in Florida with you, so that's awesome.
All right.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again.
Thanks for
Thank you.
joining.
Yeah,
Have a good
have a
morning.
great day.
All right, guys.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Magic stop it button.
Awesome.